For more on Kerry's Asia tour, I'm joined here in the studio by Kurt Volker. He's a former U.S. ambassador to NATO and the executive director of the McCain Institute for International Leadership at Arizona State University. So Kerry meets with the Chinese president, the foreign minister. They come to kind of a consensus on the D.P.R.K, sort of. What do you think? Where does this go forward?
Well, I think there are some shared interests and some very different interests. The shared interests are that I think both China and the United States are both alarmed at North Korea's nuclear testing and some of the radical behavior out of Kim Jong-un, so the desire to push back. The tactics, however, are where people start to differ. I think the United States is looking for sharper language, tougher UN resolution, possibly some sanctions, just really trying to squeeze, and believes that China has the means to do that as the principal trading partner, the principal country right there with North Korea. China, on the other hand, doesn't really want to use that kind of heavy leverage, wants to send a signal, but to keep it a little bit of a softer approach. And so, yes, they agreed, but yes, they didn't agree.
But one would think if the United States was right next to the D.P.R.K, the last thing in the world you'd want is perhaps send a signal and have instability and having people flooding into your country, which is a concern of China.
Well, there is that concern, but then there's also the concern that let's not say crazy, but an unpredictable leader in North Korea with a nuclear weapon is a very dangerous thing, and maybe even more dangerous for those who are in the neighborhood.
Yes. Wang Yi said that sanctions are not an end in themselves. The goal should be to bring the nuclear issue of the Korean Peninsula back to the negotiating track. That is a statement China's really been hitting at. They want the six-party talks to get going. They'd like to see this thing resolved at the negotiating table. It happened with Iran after the sanctions there. What's the likelihood of that?
Well, I think it's very unlikely, and frankly, I think you have to start again with North Korea, that they're very unwilling to deal with South Korea in any legitimate way whatsoever. So as part of this framework, you've got the South Koreans and North Koreans together. I don't think the North Koreans are going to go for that. The United States has always been a proponent of this six-party process, thinking that that gets the neighbors into the region. It helps put a little bit more regional pressure on North Korea, but I honestly don't see that moving ahead right now.
You're a brainstormer. There's one method, the U.S. method, the China method. Is there a third way?
Well, you know, I do think that the best efforts we've ever seen have been when South Korea and North Korea have allowed more to more people exchanges, that they've seen family reunifications, they've seen cross-border communication. When that's been allowed to happen, tensions have tended to ease for a while, and it gave you a sense that maybe there's going to be a different way forward. But I honestly have to say that since Kim Jong-un took power in North Korea, he's been trying to prove himself by being extraordinarily defiant, and that has created a very dangerous situation.
South China Sea, also disagreements there.
Yeah.
Is there a path forward there?
Well, yeah, I think there's a path forward. I think the Chinese put their finger on it when they say they don't want to militarize the islands and to militarize their claims. If they stick to that in action, not just in words, I think that will buy time and give people a chance to work on this.
Is it a miscalculation on the part of the Secretary of State, though, to go to Laos and Cambodia, hey, get on our side against China before you go and meet with China?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Because honestly, when we see what's been happening, the land reclamation, the building of airstrips, for everybody other than China, it looks like a militarization of the Chinese claims to these islands. And so everyone is very concerned. And it's important, I think, for China to see that it's not the United States far away talking to China about something nearby. This is all of China's neighbors that are concerned about what China is doing here. That's the dynamic that I think is important to keep in play.
It's worth noting some neighbors, because Cambodia did not come on the same side as Kerry.
Vietnam and the Philippines are the key ones.
All right. Thanks so much, Kurt.